Okay, welcome into KC Sports Tonight, Monday, April 6th, aka the final day of the college basketball season. If you're listening to this and you live in the Kansas City metro, it's felt like it's over for quite some time with all of our teams out of the mix. But tonight we'll get UConn and Michigan in the final. 2-seed UConn against 1-seed Michigan. Wolverines take the court as 7.5-point favorites. Gabe, let's start there. You have kind of an interesting storyline here, which is, look, Michigan looked pretty invincible in the Final Four against Arizona, just beating them by like 30, I think, close to it. But they're 1 for 6 in national title games. Their last national championship coming in 1989. UConn, on the other hand, has won 2 of the last 3. They're looking for 3 of the last 4. Obviously, the 2-seed. But give me your Spark Notes thoughts on this matchup.
I think that Michigan is. I expect Michigan to win. I think that the 1-6 record in title games is one of those things where it's like, yeah.
What does that have to do with us?
This has nothing to do with this team.
Yeah.
They weren't expected to win it when they played in 2018 against Villanova. They weren't expected to win it in 2013 when they played Louisville. They weren't expected to win it several other times that they've made the title game. And with that being said, I think the UConn respect has gone. There is a reason that you have to respect UConn. Of course, they've won 2 titles in the last 3 years and narrowly lost to Florida, who won the title last year, even though UConn was an 8-seed. Mm-hmm. So Danny Hurley has earned the reputation as this invincible man in the NCAA tournament. But I watched 30 minutes of Duke UConn before I abandoned it to go to the grocery store.
You and I both.
And they should have lost that game. And I watched them play Michigan State in the Sweet 16, and they led by 20, and they blew it. They were trailing in the second half. They allowed Michigan State back in that game.
In the armor.
So they're clearly not as good as the 2 teams that they won the national title with. And Solo Ball has the foot injury. Of course, Yaxel Lendeborg for Michigan has the knee bone bruise or MCL sprain, whatever the doctor's designation is. But Michigan is just an absolute wagon, and it feels like they are a team that gets up for the big games. Like all of the times that they have lost this season, you can say that Purdue in the Big Ten championship game was a big game. But in terms of the stakes of like what actually mattered, it wasn't. And more often than not, they have rose to the occasion of these big games, specifically in the NCAA tournament. So my hopes are not that high for a quality game, because my hopes were super high Saturday night when they played Arizona, and
that was rough from the jump. They got tough. Down 12-1 or something.
Yeah.
It was like, I don't even know if they got back within single digits like once or twice, but yikes. I think it's going to be a blowout. Yaxel Lindenberg, did you hear Dusty May's quote on him on, I think it was Sunday?
He said he looked like a 38-year-old at the YMCA.
But a very good 38-year-old at the YMCA in the second half. So we'll see how his rehab went. Man, that's a tight turn if you're healthy to go Sunday, Monday flip in these caliber games, nonetheless, somehow simultaneously injuring your knee and ankle, which I can't remember the last time anyone notable has done that.
Yeah.
But props to him. He's playing. Same with Solo Ball. Neither of them are on the injury reports heading into today, even though Ball was in a walking boot yesterday and didn't practice. Hurley said that's at the press conference podium. He's like, well, I might as well tell you this because you're going to see him in a walking boot. Kind of hard to hide what's going on there. But yeah, we'll see. For college basketball's sake, I hope it's close, just because the Final Four on Saturday was kind of a rough watch.
Yeah.
But we'll see. 7:50 tonight, Kansas City time, which is much later than it should be, in my opinion. But we'll get a late tip-off.
8:50 local in Indianapolis.
What? Why? That's a different conversation. But we will see, again, 7:50 tonight if you're in Kansas City. Okay, moving on to some local hoops news. If you've been keeping up with the transfer portal today, it was unbelievable. I think I saw a number, like, within half an hour, there were 450 plus names in there.
And it's not even it's not officially open yet. They're not legally.
Yeah.
They're not officially in the portal because the portal doesn't open until tonight at midnight.
Yeah.
But several hundred
Several,
players
yeah.
have either reportedly or confirmed to people that yes, I will be entering the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So
a mess. Particularly, I mean, where do you even start? Kansas, their big men are all entering. This is the point of the off season, I suppose, where I'm like, let's just see how this plays out, because we saw everyone hit the panic button last year when Flory Badunga did it. He ended up coming back to Kansas. Not saying every guy that enters the portal is just going to hop right back to the school. I think more often than not, it'll be the alternative where these guys do seek better NIL deals. But such is the state of college athletics, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that this is relatively annoying,
Yeah.
and I think that the conversation specifically surrounding Flory Badunga is one that I think that fans are rightfully annoyed by and angered by, because
testing the market.
Exactly. And at this point, last year it was like, oh, testing the market, and then I think it was like 3 or 4 days later, it was like, okay, psych, actually, I'm coming back to KU, and this is the deal that I'm taking. We have seen several players from Mizzou, obviously not the same caliber of player. Trent Burns is not the same caliber of player. Trent Pierce is not the same caliber of player as Flory, who was Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year and is next year probably going to be a preseason All-American regardless of where he suits up. No one seriously believes that he's actually going to go through the NBA draft process, because he can get the same amount of money or more in college
and
next
you
year.
guarantee you'll play versus
Then
squandering away
be
maybe.
a late first round or early second round pick in the NBA. This is ultimately a matter of him maximizing his value. Now, what frustrates me as a college basketball person is I think that we have lost the plot on individuals and adults. Not to say that the players are not adults, because they are legally adults, but the people advising these young men who are still playing college basketball, that you must and you have no choice but to maximize your value at all times and extract every possible dollar out of whichever school you want to be a mercenary for, in lieu of building a legacy or building a connection to an institution and some fans that will actually root for you forever.
You know, a great example of that, sorry to interrupt you, Bennett Sturts.
Yeah, I mean,
a guy that could have had bigger financial opportunities, but stuck with his guy, Ben McCollum, from D2 to Drake to Iowa.
Yeah, so there's that. And I had this conversation today with some people who follow college basketball very closely, and one of them said, well, what is KU offering Flory that is worth him staying for? And my argument would be that you're going to be a third-year guy under Bill Self, and you are the number one option or the number two at worst option, that, yeah, they're going to ask for you to take a step forward offensively and be better at scoring around the rim when it doesn't come down to dunking the ball. But you are going to be afforded every opportunity to flourish next year and be an All-American and average 18 and 10. If we're being light, he averaged 14 and 9 this year. So to pass up on that, or maybe pass up on that, to entertain the offers from, who knows, if Duke comes calling or Michigan comes calling when Adai Mara and Yaxel move on and they need new players in the front court. Dusty May's not. He's a guy who the college basketball world likes to talk about him chatting up with different guys who may or may not have entered the portal yet. So there's all of these things, and my argument would be that if you're not willing to stand by a coach who committed to a bigger role for you last year when you were in this same spot, like, what does that say about your competitive drive of like, oh, I need to see the entire roster? Well, no, the sport is going to turn over. So I think that if he actually does leave, and all indications are that this year is a more serious departure than last year based on reports, I think Kansas fans would rightfully be really upset by this. But the flip side, and I would ask you this because I want to hear what you think as far as the health of the program, is if we know that KU has money, and maybe they at least all reports are that they were not one of the top 5 to 10 spenders. Not to say that last year's KU roster was cheap, because I don't think anybody thinks that Peterson and Flory were playing for nothing. But if the reports are that Bill Self is getting extra NIL money for next year's roster, and you have the home court, and you have all of the facilities are not a question, all of these types of things, at what point do we look at Bill Self and we say, what are the conversations and what are the priorities of retaining people each year? Because we're now on 3 years in a row where the results have not necessarily matched up with the standard that Bill Self set. Now, of course, he's a victim of his own success of setting such a high standard. But at the same time, you're getting into this habit where if the results aren't perfect and the result isn't the national title in 2022 and a bunch of guys from that team came back the next year, everyone seems to be, oh, well, we can just disband and bring in a new 8 or 9 guys. And that just, at some point we have to say, like, what is the failure as far as the culture of keeping people? Because there are schools that have been able to keep some guys.
Yeah, it's the amount of time I've spent like jumbling in my head about the state of college athletics when we have these conversations. On the athlete side of things, your days as a player are, especially this group of guys that are playing right now, especially the younger guys, like, didn't ask to be put in this position. They're making so much money doing this, but like, they're just taking advantage of the opportunities that they have, right? Basketball is a limited sport. Your lifespan is, I mean, we've seen the outliers, but usually you play, I don't know, 5 to 7 years after college. If you make it in the NBA, maybe you get a good contract, a lucrative contract overseas, because those leagues do exist. But there's a shelf life on how much money you're going to make doing this. So in a way, do I blame 18-year-olds for saying who's the highest bidder and I'll just hop around? No, I mean, I get it. It's like generational wealth we're talking about. From like a competitor standpoint and a commitment standpoint and like the integrity of college basketball, I hate it. I mean, it's just the worst when you see literally thousands of people jumping in the transfer portal year to year. You're relearning rosters every year. You think about college basketball as we knew it up until, a couple of years ago now. You'd watch these guys over the years like develop, and senior nights were like emotional because you'd hear from guys, you remember they came to campus 5 years ago and took a redshirt year, and then and that piece is gone, and that's really unfortunate because to me that separated the NBA from college basketball. Like, that gave you a reason to cheer for. And there's so much nuance to this conversation because, again, I talk about when I was playing. I played mid-major, which was not in current day basketball is not a major financial opportunity. And I also played women's basketball, which unfortunately is not on par with what men are making. But I was there when Mark Emmert's slogan was, they're getting a free education. That's also not where we should be. So there's like this, we flipped the scale and have completely been let loose into the wild, wild west. And for guys like Bill Self, who is used to develop, I mean, think about what Danny Manning did with bigs in like the early 2000s. Like, for guys who build programs like that, the Kentuckys of the world, not saying Kentucky, they're not playing tonight, but the Kentuckys of the world that kind of built their programs off of one and done players who would do a freshman year and then they go to the NBA. Bill Self wasn't necessarily looking for those guys. I mean, he had a handful, but when I think about true KU players in the 2000s and 2010s, I think of like Frank Mason and like Russell Robinson in 2000, guys that stuck with the program
Yeah.
and developed over years and years. And kind of the big man model that they had and really had until Udoka Azubuike, which is you take a guy, his senior year, he is number one. You have a David McCormick behind him who, spouts a minute. And then after the number one guy moves on, you have your new number one and the number two, and you bring an up-and-comer to kind of shadow him. So for guys like that do that old school model, I mean, KU hasn't made it past the first weekend since 2022 when this kind of all started. So where does that leave this conversation?
I just think that it's a fascinating part of the Bill Self legacy is how much, and I would love to ask him this, and maybe it's the question to be asked at Big 12 Media Days when we get to talk to him again in October or later this offseason, is how much of the last couple years of the results not being up to what you want them to be, how much of turning over the roster is guys not wanting to be there, and how much of it is you not feeling like the guys who are there are fits. Because
or is it a financial? I mean, they have the money. We're not talking about like Northern Iowa or like, no offense to the Northern Iowa fans listening. Like we're talking about a Power 5 blue blood here.
I think they have the money if they really, really want Flory to get him to stay, and they have the money. Well, I mean, he may just really, really want a different level of money. I would argue if I know that a guy is going to be an All-American, presumably, based on his production, and he was nearly an All-American as a sophomore, I would make him one of the top 5 to 15 players paid in the country if that's what he wants. That's probably what the market dictates. The Bryson Tiller thing is like, if you really want him to stay around, you probably could, but if you're benching him in the Big 12 tournament and you're calling him out publicly, and in hindsight, like basically just punted on that Houston game in the Big 12 semifinals. As soon as Bill Self decided like Bryson Tiller's not playing in the second half, and they were down 8 at halftime, that was not like, you were just giving up that game to prove a point to a guy. And in today's college basketball, that you might as well hold up a sign that says like, I don't want you back anymore. So I stand by what I said on this show 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago before the St. John's game, which was that KU was eventually going to lose in this tournament, and people were going to overreact and say, I don't like this team, and I didn't like the roster, and I don't like the fits, and we need to get new guys and all these kinds of things. And I heard that takes from KU fans, and I've seen that take online from the KU Twitter burnerverse of all of these different people who create accounts for all these different guys and express their frustration. But I watched the Final Four, and what Michigan did is so hard to do, of basically turning over the whole roster. They had 29 or 30% of their roster's minutes returned from last year, and that was the lowest of all the Final Four teams. So you can say, oh yeah, it worked out for them, but they hit on Yaxel, who was the best player in the transfer portal last year. They hit on Mara. They hit on all these other guys. Merez Johnson, who got a lot of money to leave Illinois to come to Michigan. But you look at Arizona and you look at UConn, and Alex Caravan has played 20 tournament games as of tonight for UConn, and he said he's never entertained the portal. Like, there are those guys, and you can retain talent. And I think Arizona next year, the question for them of how good they are is just, does Krivas go to the NBA or does he stay? Does Karchenkov go to the NBA or does he stay? Those guys aren't presumably transfer. They're not transferring because those programs are healthy and the portal is going well for them. And you objectively cannot look at the way that KU is building their roster and say that is a healthy roster. It's just it's not every single season to do this. So if this is the last year of Bill Self, I think that is the thing that KU fans will want the most from a new coach, is either be way better at evaluating transfer portal talent and putting together a roster that fits, or somehow build a culture that keeps guys around for more than 1 year. But we'll see.
I think with the North Carolina news of hiring Michael Malone and even KU bringing in Jacques Vaughn, an NBA guy, like that kind of points to where things are turning in terms of identifying transfer portal talent, bringing guys in who aren't necessarily going to stay for that long. I'll tell you what, I've covered Bill Self's teams for, since 2018, 2019, so 8 years. Same with K-State, same with, I guess, Mizzou I started in 2022, whatever.
Yeah.
This KU team reminded me, I was with the Final Four team in 2022. This is the closest team that's reminded me to that team, like personality-wise, gel-wise, and like high ceiling-wise. I think that 2022 team played at that ceiling far more consistently, but like we got flashes of that 2022 team. I think about the Iowa State game, the Arizona game at home. And personality-wise, with like what Melvin Council was able to do with the fan base in a very short amount of time, even like Bryson Tiller, and I know Darren Peterson had some issues with, what he was going through and the communication to the fan base, which they didn't necessarily deserve. I mean, these are kids going through their own thing. The doors are closed in a lot of ways. But so on days like today where we see all these names disappearing, I'm bummed because I think Bryson Tiller is the definition of a guy like David McCormick. Like
he had higher averages as a freshman.
Yeah, he played great. I mean, we would be
twins.
talking a lot more about Bryson Tiller had Darren Peterson also not been a freshman on this roster and, over in BYU. And so had Bill Self had these pieces 5 years ago and then could build them into a second year and gel a little bit more, I mean, I think we'd be talking about a contender next year. But instead, he's probably going to have to start from scratch in a couple weeks, which is, we'll see. Oh, by the way, Paul Mbia also hitting the portal today when we talk about.
Yeah, it's like, why would you even bring in a guy like that if he puts in some good tape against Cal Baptist? And
I was just going to say, look great
and then he's
against
like,
Cal Baptist.
actually, I'm going to use that tape to go.
Bye. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, like, look, why did I give you that?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time we'll talk about the state of college basketball, but season ends tonight, and then we will see what happens over the course of the offseason. Interesting conversation.
There will be additions. They can add players too.
Sure. Also, I said we're going to move on. I lied. It is really crazy to me because when I was playing, transferring was like next to impossible. I remember having a conversation, not saying I would have transferred, but having a conversation with a couple of my teammates, and like we didn't really understand the rules. We just knew that you had to sit out a full year, like a full calendar year, which was enough motivation to be like, I can't do that. Like my next game's gonna be in almost 2 years from now. Like that just isn't possible. So it went from being so difficult to being like almost assumed you will transfer after a year. And there has to be some middle ground. But also, like, I don't know, this is probably not what guys like Flory Badunga and those kind of guys are thinking about when you're talking about the price tags that they're looking at with these contracts. But like to play with the same group of people generally over the several years, I mean, that's to me what college basketball kind of felt like it was about too, but maybe I'm being a little too sentimental in a day and age where NIL is upon us. So we'll see what happens, in short. To go from the Mark Emmert era to this, though, is wild.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we only have a couple of minutes left. If you're watching this live, the Royals are playing right now, so we'll skim past this.
They just
you haven't
gave
missed
up
much.
A home run.
Okay, you missed something. I just checked.
I
just checked my phone, and I'm at 0-0-1 out. Okay, well, that was ill-timed. Okay, 1-0 Guardians are up. I will add, tomorrow's game was originally supposed to be at 5:10. It's now at 12:10 because of like
frigid temperatures.
Quote, frigid temperatures. I stopped in our meteorologist's office today. Corey said low 30s with wind chills into the 20s, and that it was going to be almost that cold, like the same temperature at noon as it was at 5, still like very, very cold, but you have the benefit of it being a little sunny.
Sun,
yeah, so interested to see. I mean, think about what it was like on opening day. You and I were there, to going to playing baseball in the 30s. That sounds awful.
Yeah, I don't understand why Major League Baseball keeps making teams play so many games in the colder weather cities at this time of year. Like, the Rangers should play a lot of home games in April, and the Diamondbacks should too, and I don't know. But
storyline of its own to follow tomorrow, though. But yeah, big one today. I mean, Royals are 4-5. Again, we're 9 down, 153 of these things to go. Is that math right?
yes,
I hope so, because I said that on air yesterday. So I'm glad that in my head that math added up, literally. But, anytime you got a division team, can't hurt to pick up a couple.
Yes.
So, okay. Last topic, really quickly, before we call it a wrap, is the NFL draft snuck up on us, at least on me, less than 3 weeks away now. 2 weeks and 3 days.
Yeah.
We've been kind of kicking the can down the road and saying, like, well, we don't know what's going to happen over the course of free agency. Has that narrative changed for you at all, or do you want to wait till we get a little bit closer? You have 1 minute for your answer.
Yeah,
so.
I don't think so. Yeah. I think that maybe it snuck up on us just because we end up getting enamored by the NCAA tournament. But, like, Brett Veach has known that he's going to be picking 9th since January. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what day it was, but the first week or second week of January.
Yeah.
He's known for 3+ months. And now it feels like every report that comes out, the 50-minute interview that he did last week with Peter Schrager, naming different positions that he could pick, it all just feels like a smokescreen.
It's funny, he did that. He does this every year. Yeah. I think he's admitted it too, like, what am I going to do? Tell you who I'm going to like? I'm just going to list every position, and it's going to be one of those. Yeah.
The only thing that you know is that the Chiefs want teams ahead of them to draft positions that they have answers at. So Fernando Mendoza going 1 is great for the Chiefs. Yeah. Jeremiah Love getting picked before 9 is good for the Chiefs.
Fine.
And we'll go from there. But it's going to be here very soon.
That'll do it for us here on KC Sports Tonight. Royals are playing now. 6 o'clock news is coming up right after this, and we will see you back here same time, same place tomorrow.